Useless Monster by Mute Crows. Chapter 25. Never thought I would be uncomfortable in fresh sheets before now. Izuku held the glass of water in his hand loosely, staring at the sink as he waited for Aizawa to declare they were leaving. They were up earlier than the past week set precedent for, but it was also a rather unique day in the grand scheme of the school year. The school festival was finally upon them.
Midoriya, you still need to eat your breakfast, even if it's just a few bites.
Aizawa's voice carried into the kitchenette from the living room. Izuku sighed before he set his glass in the sink. This was part of their routine now, too. A simple breakfast. He wasn't sure if Aizawa was operating out of Recovery Girl's instructions to make sure he was eating, or if it was his way of trying to make a moment for Izuku to talk, if he wanted to. Either way, he had been hoping to get out of it today. His nerves were making him feel gross, to put it nicely. He walked into the room and grabbed one of the onigiri as he slid on his bag. He had the lost bento box, clean and wrapped, already nestled inside. They usually were both early enough that he always got the time to swap boxes with Yagi before that many students had gotten to campus.
You want to eat on the go?
Izuku looked at the neatly decorated rice in his hand for a moment before nodding.
You'll tell the staff if you feel at any point that you can't participate in the festival, correct?
Aizawa was watching him carefully. Today was day 9 after all. It wasn't an issue until nightfall, but Aizawa had made a firm point about he shouldn't wear himself out the day before he has to shift. Izuku had explained multiple times that he knew that and that he knew his limits. There were only so many times he could run through how he felt out his shifts before it started to grate on him, and even then, it was not many times to begin with. He nodded again. He could feel the weight of Aizawa looking him over.
All right.
And that was it. They left the duplex, Aizawa locking the door behind them, and started on their walk to campus. They reached the point in which they usually split off from each other in silence. Aizawa used the side entrance they typically took to leave the school, whereas Izuku headed to the front entrance. Today, though, Aizawa made a small noise like he remembered something he hadn't meant to forget and reached into his pocket.
I meant to give this to you last night.
He held out a phone in a simple case. Oh! Izuku turned it over in his hand to see the back of the case had a single familiar V emblazoned on the bottom corner.
Aizawa-sensei! It's yours. Make sure to memorize your number. You already have mine, Yamada's, and Yagi-san's number saved into the contacts. Of course, you are free to add whoever you would like as well. You're also heavily encouraged to text or call us whenever, especially if anything goes wrong or you need one of us to come get you from where or whatever you find yourself.
He started to turn away before stopping.
Oh, and I figured it goes without saying, but don't lose it.
Izuku nodded, knowing that Aizawa was very well aware that he had an impeccable knack for keeping track of things. When he got to the front gate, he was surprised to see how many stalls were set up for visitors to the campus. A decent crowd was already waiting in line to get through security, their chatter reminding him of how morning train stations would sound. The people who had already been cleared were looking at the attraction stalls and mini-games set out for passing time before the games officially started. A number of the stalls had merchandise for popular heroes, and some had masks and signs for what he assumed were third years, young heroes new to the field and just starting to make names for themselves. He stood off of the pathway and took it all in at his own pace, phone held securely in his hands. When he looked down at it, waking it up for the first time to see the default wallpapers, he came to realize this is very much so not a cheap phone. The interface had a lot of accessories he didn't exactly recall seeing on other students' phones whenever he had passed them by in the past. He shook his head just slightly before he tucked it into his pocket, making sure it wouldn't fall out, and made his way to the arena to try and find his class's lobby. When he pushed the door open, he was surprised, but also not, to find Ida doing stretches already in his dim uniform. "Good morning, Ida," he greeted his friend with a small smile. Red eyes snapped to him, and he didn't comment on the slight jump Ida had in response to his greeting. He really thought that him opening the door was something noisy enough to be noticed. He was trying to get better at not startling his classmates. Rebecca had made a whole speech about how Izuku was unfairly quiet and startled her frequently already, and it was hardly any length of time into the school year. Good morning, Midoriya. He hopped back up to standing and smiled back. I see you also took the time to get here early enough to probably stretch and get ready for the undoubtedly rigorous exercise we will have today.
Yeah, I actually had a question.
Izuku fished out his new phone and opened up the contacts and set it up to where Ida could add his number.
I just got a new phone and realized I never got anyone's number in the first place.
He was careful to word it so that if Ida tried to fill in blanks, his mind would fill in that Izuku had previously had a phone but merely forgot to swap numbers. A simple lie, but it was still a lie. His fingers twitched. He kept his face carefully pleading. Of course! I will even add you to the class's group chat and make sure everyone sounds off so that you can get everyone else's number quickly. Ida neatly grabbed his phone and punched in his number and then sent himself a text. Izuku's phone lit up moments later with 1, 2, multiple texts! Ida handed it back to him and he saw that it was all people just saying their names. That way he could just save the numbers directly.
Thank you, Ida!
Izuku started to quickly organize them away into his contacts. Don't forget to get changed into your gym uniform and put your bag away into your locker before the first attendance call of the day. Ida went back to stretching as Izuku hummed his acknowledgement. He sent a greeting to the group chat as well as an apology for not having joined sooner. A good half of the class replied back immediately, a mix of reassurances to not worry, return greetings, and pointing out other numbers and who they were since they hadn't messaged yet. He saved those numbers as well and organized them within his contacts with subheadings the device allowed.
I'll be back, see you in a bit.
He waved without really looking and slipped out of the room. The door closed as the sentiment was returned. He picked his way through the mostly empty halls distractedly, searching for the specific location of Yagi's pain. It was practically non-existent, which meant that he hadn't used one for all yet today. Once he had the room and shortest path mapped out in his mind, he allowed himself a small twinge of pride at how much better he was getting at locating directly with his quirk, instead of just feeling out the general area. Quick-paced, he made a beeline to the small conference room Yagi was in, tea in his hands, as he sat on the couch with his eyes closed. Izuku brushed against the low ache and was met with a small smile.
Good morning, Izuku. You're here earlier than usual, so forgive me, but I left your bento in the teacher's lounge.
Yagi sat up straighter and rolled his shoulders loosely.
I know, and it's okay. There is still a while before I have to be back at the festival room. Oh!
Izuku's eyes shot down and, trying valiantly to keep his face from heating up, dug into his bag with much more force than he meant to as his heart started to race.
I have that bento box from last week. I'm sorry that I misplaced it, but I have it back now so that... My boy, it's okay. I was and will be fine getting however many boxes are needed to be sure you have lunch every day.
He was laughing as he cut off Izuku's keyed-up ramble before it got into full swing. He reached forward and took the empty bento box by the tie. Izuku put his bag next to himself as he sat on the couch across from him, an embarrassed smile working onto his face. He was more than happy to let the conversation continue, not really wanting to examine the near slip-up right then, if ever.
Don't worry about it, Yagi-san. I was going to actually eat in the cafeteria today, or at least I planned to, but I don't know if my voucher for lunch got processed yet.
He scratched at his jaw absently.
I just didn't know if you had anything you wanted to talk about.
Yagi waited, ever patient, as Izuku let out a nervous breath and picked at his shirt.
I'm nervous. I know that Aizawa-sensei said early on that the sports festivals that this school holds are important and can have different impacts on our future opportunities as hero class students.
Yagi conceded before taking a sip from his tea.
That doesn't mean the festivals are the only thing you need to worry about. The way the festivals work for professional heroes and tech companies is as a scouting event. We get a chance to see up-and-coming heroes at their beginnings, and can watch how they grow and adapt through their time here at UA, for better or worse. Other schools hold competitions as well. It's just that UA has the largest budget via partnerships with many companies and the government.
Izuku hummed to show he was paying attention, gaze focused on where his hands were still picking at his clothing.
This kind of event will always be an excellent way to showcase yourself, put yourself in the forefront, and some, if not most, of your fellow students will be going to do just that. You may very well be behind the curve, so to speak, when it comes to functioning with an offensive style quirk, but battles are not the only thing that occur in the festivals, as I'm sure you know. I am well aware by now of the circumstances you have conducted yourself under before now, Izuku. If you wish to step into the limelight and tell the world that you are here today and be loud about it, I will be here to give you a starting point. If you wish to wait until next year, or the year after, or after you graduate to do so, I know you will outshine any of the flashy quirks displayed your classmates may pull out.
He set his cup down.
But, Izuku.
He looked up from his hands, stopping his repeated motions.
If you decide you wish to stay more of an underground hero like Eraserhead is, and use the strengths you have honed and developed, use the quirk you earned, on top of the quirk and ability you were born with, that is something I would not force you out of. You have, and can continue, to help people like All Might could never reach from so far into the light of the media. When you are a hero on the top of the hill like All Might is, it is difficult to maintain status and still commit to the sometimes underhanded and morally grey ways that are necessary to succeed. Underground hero circles are small but incredibly necessary and beyond beneficial. Whatever you decide to do, I will support you wholeheartedly and help you however I can. You don't have to have an answer for me either. It is an answer for you to figure out and hold yourself. One that you can change whenever and shape to fit your needs, as you see fit.
He leans forward, giving Izuku one of the most sincere looks he can remember getting from his mentor.
You have 3 festivals to work through, along with a number of internships in your future here at the school. You have time.
Izuku stared back, unsure of how to respond and not sound like he was trying to brush things aside. I do want to put myself out there, he nodded, feeling like he was reassuring himself more than Yagi. I might not go as big as you have, Yagi-san, but I have had enough practice keeping my daily life and condition separate. Yagi nodded. I know the world can be and is a wonderful place. I have seen both the bright and dark parts of it many times, Yagi-san. I also know that as a tutelary or whatever principal Nezu said the other people like me were, it just seems brighter when I'm not a very big part of it. Izuku dropped his gaze, not wanting to see what he knows is some kind of upset in the other's eyes. I attract a lot of unsavory things. I just want to help where I can and not make it worse for others. A ping went off, and Yagi pulled out his phone with a breath of annoyance. He scanned whatever message he had received and frowned before standing.
My boy.
He took a deep breath.
There are many ways you make the world better, both in small ways and larger ones. Heroes overall will always attract unsavory things. It's part of the dance that keeps the world in motion. You shouldn't...
His phone pinged again. You can go, Yagi-san. I can meet with you after the festival. He left it, leading so that way Yagi could back out if he had something he had to do and he didn't feel obligated.
Of course, Izuku. I'm sorry to have to leave like this.
He picked up the bento from where he had set it on the table between them and put his phone away to grab his tea with his other hand.
I will be watching from the stands and rooting for you.
Thanks! They smiled at each other before Yagi rushed from the room. He waited a few moments before he slid down the couch and let out a loud groan. A look at the clock on the wall said that he would have just enough time to run to his locker and change. He would be cutting it close, though. When he did finally enter the festival lobby again, the entire class was scattered around the room. There was a tense energy underlying the chatter and general self-hyping up that was going on. They were mere minutes away from the festival. Izuku took a seat at one of the tables and looked around at his classmates. He accidentally made eye contact with Todoroki, who, for reasons unknown to him, gave him a narrowed glare. He snapped his gaze back down to the table in front of him, opting to not look around anymore. When the announcement came over the intercom in their lobby to make their way to the field, excited whoops came from half of the class. Outside, the crowd was loud and boisterous, but the sound of Yamada in full present mic gusto narrating their entrances to the field had some of the buzz under his skin settling. This is just a series of games. No one is going to be in any danger. He zoned out the initial announcements, especially when he saw Bakugo approach midnight on her stage. It would only be pointless gloating that didn't have any influence this way or that. He only truly started to pay attention again when the screen behind them came to life, displaying a blur of words in motion before settling on the actual game type. An obstacle race. Izuku actually had to bite back a small laugh. Running was probably what he has excelled at the most in his life. He almost felt like he could relax as he zoned back out, dragging his eyes across the crowd of students. He shifted from foot to foot as he saw the way many students were glaring at Bakugo and looking to be in various states of offense or indignance. There was a decent amount of bodies he would have to work around, not a midday metro crowd, more like the hour before a lunch rush where the early birds were trying to eke out the rest of the working crowd. That was doable. Of course, the quirks would be a variable he would have to account for, but he honestly had been feeling rather cooped up after a week of not wandering and working constantly. He hadn't wanted to ask about being allowed to wander like usual. He didn't want anyone to think he was running away and put him under some kind of pseudo-house arrest. He should probably talk to Yagi about it before he goes stir-crazy. Gods, being grounded must have been the worst for the kids that had been. He watched as students started making their way to the starting patch. Even still, he didn't move. In fact, when he started to get caught in the pre-race crowd, he stepped back to pull out of the bulk of the people. The lights to go were posted on either side of the tunnel. The worst place to be in a rush is mid-crowd. The back is better than the front in this situation, since he had no idea what all quirks he would be up against. A glance to the side, and he saw Shinso doing the same. The speakers played an audio cue countdown. At the buzzer, out of gas. He watched the way students all shoved and effectively held each other back. His heart keyed up a few beats before it hit him, mind recalling the rules that had been shown on screen for the race. They didn't have any rules beyond the intentional and malicious injury thing. Nothing said I couldn't. He looked over and Shinso flashed him a grin, along with a small two-finger salute. He let out a breath and returned the gesture. Then he backed up to get a running start. The feeling of shoulders under his soles was wobbly, but he let out a surprised bark of laughter that it actually worked and started to hop across the top of the crowd. The breeze coming through the tunnel as he had students shouting around him felt lovingly familiar. A few tried to trip him up, but he stayed nimble and eventually was far enough up to see a bunch of the students at the front frozen in place by their shoes, breaking free slowly but steadily. The care with which he was trying not to just kick people in the head as he hopped vaguely reminded him of trying to cross rivers and not get his shoes wet. Shoulders targeted with the same ease as going for wobbling rocks. Don't land too heavily or it will tumble. There! The crowd was thin enough that he could drop between the students and slip between them with ease. The ice went out just a bit past the exit of the tunnel, and Izuku slid along as it continued to spread briefly. He spotted Todoroki breaking the crowd just moments later, running towards the looming shadows of multiple zero-pointers, and felt an unexpected run through him. He didn't slow his pace, even taking it so far as to hop forward a short distance as he felt the way his muscles warmed. Mike's voice was ringing out over the walls of the arena, but he didn't try to listen. The excited energy was all he needed to know as the roar of the crowd muffled the words. Just as the machines reached their full height, Izuku felt an odd flex that wasn't part of him, followed by a massive burst of cold air. He hopped again, just barely doing it in time to have the layer of ice shoot under him and freeze the machines as they moved. That was unusually sloppy. Izuku stumbled slightly as he slid on the fresh ice before he could regain traction, running flat-footed to stay balanced. He remembered the class hero/villain matches. Todoroki had shown to be both precise and broad with his attacks. Someone behind them was yelling, and Todoroki shouted back, but Izuku knew it wasn't something he needed to waste breath on. The ice fractured, tilting the robot at an unsteady angle. He hugged as close as he dared to Todoroki's pace, barely slipping under the machine as it hit the ground, and huffed out a short laugh at the small amount of adrenaline it shot into his veins. Oddly similar to losing a tailing hero. The thought probably wasn't something that should be left unpacked, but now wasn't the time. Todoroki turned slightly with a surprised look at the sound of Izuku's laugh. A blast erupted from the fallen 0-pointers. Izuku tripped, the spike of fear unexpected. He rolled through it and scrambled back to his feet. The loss of momentum let Todoroki and now Bakugo build their lead. It wasn't important. He pushed himself to keep going, swallowing back the anxiety that was lancing through him with each blast. He should have expected the sound, but it still had scared him. The ground opened up in front of him, and he skidded to a stop. The ravine was massive and littered with spires of rock connected by decently thick rope. He took this in and then started to trace ropes with his eyes, ensuring that some of the paths didn't end too short, requiring a doubling back. As he did this, students started passing him with blustering confidence and excitement. Todoroki and Bakugo had both already cleared the ravine. He smiled to himself when he saw how little the ropes gave under the weight of the other students. They reminded him of the pipes that sometimes ran between buildings in the city. Familiar. He spotted the path he wanted and hopped in place with the brief excitement that was finally breaking its way through his anxiety. He was actually confident in this. The running strides he took to cross the ropes weren't seen in the other students, and as he raced past the ones on neighboring paths, he could hear the disgruntled cries of frustration. The feeling that followed the surprisingly solid sense of confidence in his chest was new. He wanted to place first, or as close as he could get. He wanted to do something that would make Yagi proud of his growth as his successor. Once on the other side of the ravine, he pushed himself to go faster, legs burning pleasantly. Some of the legs behind him, less so. There were signs he was passing, but he doesn't take the time to slow and read them. He does notice the slightly raised patches of dirt scattered in front of him, though, effectively making up half of the ground between there and the gates back into the arena. Weaving around them without slowing down was hardly an issue. Just treat it like people. Don't get in their personal space. Don't step on toes or tails. He glanced far enough ahead to see that he was quickly gaining on Bakugo and Todoroki, the other students slowly picking their way through the patch, melting to background noise. He smiled as he saw how even Bakugo was showing caution with how he angled his blasts. The information being sorted away to mean that hitting the mounds was absolutely not what people wanted to do. So it was something Izuku absolutely was going to make them do. Midoriya is fast approaching his classmates, whipping around the mines like a fish riding currents! Mike's voice reached him, absolutely saturated in joy and excitement. His narration and tone of pride about this development sent vibrating jitters through him, making him push to go as fast as he could. The blasts of Bakugo's quirk were minute, intent on avoiding the apparent mines, and the ice under Todoroki's feet was barely staying before the heat from Bakugo melted it. He held in his thrilled laughter and made a rather impulsive decision, one that was either going to give him a massive bump or backfire horribly. These are just games. He kicked off the packed dirt underfoot and boom! Intentionally aimed to hit both of his classmates, he rolled, and when the resulting, quite frankly, absurdly sized explosion of mine set them all flagging, he laughed loudly and felt the way his face split into a grin. His ears were ringing, but he could faintly hear the crowd going wild and Mike's narration spilling rapidly from the arena speakers. Izuku spun his arms wildly to right himself and glanced back to see Bakugo's dazed eyes blinking rapidly to try and refocus. Jaku! I'm going to kill you! Izuku just laughed more at that, only a little hysterical as the two fell to the ground just a bit too short, triggering more explosions. Todoroki threw out just enough ice on impact to muffle the blast only slightly. Izuku was sweating. Oh man, I just hit back and go hard enough to send him floundering! He rolled when he landed the ground, scuffing his skin, and scrambled to his feet before taking off at a full sprint. There was a small miscalculation, though, in terms of the ramifications of his decision. Halfway through the tunnel, an especially large blast echoed behind him, the wordless shouting of one Bakugo flying towards him. His side twinged sharply in fear of the pain. His gut dropped, but he thankfully had the forethought to duck to the side, sliding to a brief stop that let Bakugo shoot past him. He swallowed down the bile that had reached his throat and took off in tandem with Todoroki, who was giving him a look he couldn't quite decipher. He didn't have the time to. Bakugo broke the entryway to the roaring applause of the crowd, Buzzer shouting his victory as Izuku took one last dive to roll into the field a hair ahead of Todoroki. If he had taken the blast, it would have pushed him through into first place. The thing was, though, that he hadn't even gone into the race planning on a win. It was only once he had gotten comfortable that the want even occurred to him. He just had been lucky that he had skills and experience on things adjacent to the obstacles that let him adeptly find workarounds. Regardless, he did good. He got second out of the entire first-year class. Yagi-san is going to be so proud!